Morning. I wanted to get us into chapter 10 this morning. And chapter 10 covers possession and what we have to do at the initial, when we're writing this offer, we have to, the buyer has to declare when they want to take possession. And the book on page 137 gives you some scenarios about move out by the seller or move in by the buyer. Typically, in your typical real estate transaction, the buyer is going to take possession on the day of closing and funding. Okay? And normally those 2 days are those two occurrences occur on the same day. There are exceptions for that, however. If you, as the agent, line up the closing, say 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that loan is probably not going to be funded by the lender until the next day. And what the term funding means is that the lender funds the loan or sends the check to the title company to basically pay the seller for the property on behalf of the buyer. So it's not a difficult concept to understand, but you have to really be cautious when you're telling your buyer when they can have the keys and can move in. You have to make sure that the loan gets funded. Okay. A couple of issues that is important for you to understand in this chapter or this paragraph is that typically the insurance that has been placed on the property or that the seller has in place is strictly for the seller. It's a homeowner's insurance policy. So if you have a buyer, for example, that's taking early possession, that's moving in early, so maybe they're using a buyer's temporary residential lease, and there's a copy of that in your book also. Everybody needs to let the insurance company know that the seller is not living in the property, that the new buyer is living in the property. If you've got somebody moving in a week or two prior to closing, everything's pretty much done, the loan's already approved, the appraisal is in, and the buyer wants to go ahead and take possession, you can do that. That's what the forms are there for. We just have to make sure that the both insurance companies know what the situation is, particularly if the buyer's personal property, they're moving their sofas and TVs and things like that into the property. The seller's insurance that's on that property is not going to cover their personal property. That's why in the residential leases that we use, there is a particular paragraph in the temporary lease that talks about insurance. It says, please, everybody, notify your insurance agents because there could be a change of coverage that would be necessary in case anything catastrophic happened. So house fire, water heater that bursts, that floods the house, ruins furniture, hailstorms, things like that. So anyway, please don't forget to use those temporary leases. I've even used one if you have a closing on a late Friday afternoon and the buyer wants to take possession, but the loan is not going to be funded until Monday, go ahead and use that lease, only if it's 2 or 3 days. Even if the seller is not requiring any money in rental fees and rental cost, go ahead and use the paperwork. use the form. That's what it's there for. So anyway, read through that chapter, and we'll get into chapter 11 here in just a few minutes. Thanks.